Podcast Network's family of shows. Available everywhere podcasts.
Hello and welcome back everyone to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. And for our second to last segment of today's show, we transition back to IDP ranking, specifically the rookie linebacker class. Now, this is a position group in this class of rookies that I think is one of the weaker ones. Some of these guys on this list you might not necessarily want to pick up. These are very developmental, raw prospects, but I'm really intrigued to see how they all play out. I think most of them are in very good positions to maybe become starters in their respective teams, but overall, I do want you guys to be aware that these are mainly developmental guys who I don't think will get nice rotational time in the NFL this season, but in the very near future, they could be the next faces of the league. So coming in at the number 10 spot, we have a guy who kind of stays in his home state, a player from Temple, Jordan McGee of the Washington Commanders, their 5th round pick. Had a very nice career at Temple, where he's 3rd in TFLs last year in the AAC. He was 2nd team All AAC last year. He had 31 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks last year, so he is a very nice little mid-level prospect, mid-round prospect for Washington. And I think this is one of the better situations that he could have gone into as a mid-round prospect. I think that he's going to be learning from one of the great leaders at the linebacker position in Bobby Wagner, who they brought in. Washington is one of those defenses where you can't really say they're one of the best. They are looking to transition. Not only do they have Bobby Wagner, but they have another young guy in Jamin Davis, who is becoming one of the better on-ball linebackers in the league. So Jordan McGee, I think, is a very nice little mid-round prospect for Washington. As for IDP, I think that you should be wary about picking a guy who might not start right away, but he is in a very good situation, like I said. Coming in at the number 9 position, we have a guy in Tyron Hopper with the Green Bay Packers, who I really think people should be looking out for, mainly due to the fact that they have a guy at the linebacker position who they might not be a huge fan of. But Tyron Hopper, who was their 91st overall pick, I think that he is going to be one of those guys who has definitely the potential to start right away due to the thinness of the linebacker core in Green Bay. He had a 4.68 40, 36-inch vertical. So I really think that he has the high-end traits needed to take over the Packers kind of linebacker position. He's going to be learning under a guy in Quay Walker, who kind of has had his ups and downs in his NFL career. Obviously, he had a couple of behavioral issues. But Tyron Hopper is going to be one of those guys who I'm really excited to see develop and grow in this league, in this Packers defense that's also one of the more underrated ones in the league. So look for him to potentially, in a couple years' time, be a nice little pick in your IDP league. Coming in at number 8, a player who I'm really excited about for Seattle as one of their mid-round prospects under the new regime in Mike McDonald and John Schneider. Tyrese Knight out of UTEP, their 4th round pick. Last year at UTEP, he had 140 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks, 7 passes defended. So, as we've seen with Seattle in the past, they really have had that ability to draft these mid-round defensive prospects and develop them. And I think that in the new Mike McDonald era, they really want one of those kind of guys, because right now the question marks in that Seattle defense are definitely at the linebacker position. Obviously, they lose Bobby Wagner, a guy who they were kind of hoping would transition this younger version of a quote-unquote Legion of Boom for them. And now their top choice linebackers are Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson, who are above average at best. So look for Tyrese Knight to potentially get a lot of playing time this season, but further down the line, I think he's going to become one of the faces of the Mike McDonald new look defense. Coming in at number 7, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He goes to a Philadelphia Eagles team, who I really think are looking for some more developmental pieces to kind of sit behind the core they're building. Last year at Clemson, where he's one of the better defensive players in college football. He had 13.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 2 interceptions. So you can see that Jeremiah Trotter is one of those mid-round prospects who Dallas were happy to take a flyer on. Obviously, he is learning behind Micah Parsons, so should something happen to Micah Parsons and they need kind of an emergency type of guy, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. fits that profile. No, I'm thinking about Dallas defense. I'm sorry, guys. Kind of got mixed up there. They're still in the NFC East. But Jeremiah Trotter is one of those guys in this Philly defense who wants to build their core, around their guys who they already have. And Jeremiah Trotter will just fit into that rotation as they go along. Coming in number 6, this is the Dallas guy, Marist Liufau out of Notre Dame, who is a guy, obviously, who was learning behind Micah Parsons, not Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Sorry about my mistake. He had 44 tackles last year at Notre Dame, 4.64 in the combine in the 40, 30-inch vertical. So, Dallas, this is one of the players, like I was saying about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. when I confused teams, that Dallas is happy to take a flyer on. They obviously are all set at the linebacker position. But Marist Liufau is definitely one of those developmental guys who could, because he's learning under such a high-profile player, be one of those guys who learns quickly and gets some nice little playing time. Coming in at the number 5 position out of UNC, going to a Tennessee Titans defense who really is looking to build upon what they have there, Cedric Gray. At UNC last season, he had 121 solo tackles, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 INT. He had a nice little combine performance at 4.64 in the 40 and a 35.5-inch vertical. So Cedric Gray moves into a defense where they're kind of a mid-tier defense. They have their guys. They have guys like Azeez Al-Shaair, Harold Landry III. And they're looking to build on their little core that they're trying to create over there in Tennessee. And Cedric Gray could be one of those players who see some time. There are guys in front of him who obviously are looking to be the new faces of this Tennessee Titans defense that lost a lot of production. But look for Cedric Gray maybe in about 3 to 5 years to be a guy who I would rank kind of in the top 50 linebackers for Tennessee, a team that definitely is looking to improve on the defensive front. But coming in at number 4 is a guy out of Kentucky in Trevin Wallace, who definitely is going to have a lot of playing time in a Carolina defense that right now is just trying to stay afloat. They obviously signed guys like DJ Wonnum and Jadeveon Clowney in hopes of bolstering that defensive front. But in a Carolina Panthers team who still projects to be the worst team in the NFL, they really need new juice and depth along their defensive front 7, and Trevin Wallace could provide that. I think out of Kentucky, he had a nice little combine, 4.51, 40, 37.5-inch vertical. Last year at Kentucky, he had 54 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 interception. So look for him to be one of those players who gets the most playing time out of this group because of the fact that he's on the Carolina Panthers. But getting into the top 3, these are truly guys who I think will be starters right away, if not very high-level players in their rookie seasons. They weren't picked very high in the draft, but these are guys who I truly expect to be the faces of their teams come 5 years or so. Starting off with truly fantastic pick for this the Pittsburgh Steelers, a steal in their draft class, Peyton Wilson out of NC State, a 4.4, 3.40 in the combine, 34.5-inch vertical. Last year at NC State, 80 tackles, 5.5 sacks. Truly incredible player and prospect who I'm glad that the Pittsburgh Steelers got. Obviously, he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest linebacker, but Peyton Wilson is one of those guys who was willing to develop. He had a truly remarkable career at NC State, and in a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that is looking to become one of the better defenses in their storied history, look for Peyton Wilson. While he might not reach the levels of, say, a Jack Ham or Joey Porter, 2 legends in terms of Pittsburgh Steelers linebackers, look for him to be one of the guys that Mike Tomlin, should he stay as the Pittsburgh Steelers coach for a couple more years is willing to entrust the linebacker position with. Coming in at number 2, Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M, also moving to the Green Bay Packers. So they could be building something strong at the linebacker position with him and Hopper. His final season at the Texas A&M Aggies, he had 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks at the combine, 4.5, 140, 34.5-inch vertical. I'm really enthralled to see how Edgerrin Cooper develops in Green Bay along with Tyron Hopper. Also learning under Quay Walker, may want to surmount him as one of the premier linebackers for Green Bay. So I'm really thrilled that Edgerrin Cooper is on this list. But coming in at the number 1 position is Junior Colson out of Michigan, going to an LA Chargers team where he truly could potentially be one of the better players because of the fact he's learning under a Chargers defense that's rife with talent and a coach in Jim Harbaugh who really wants to push his philosophy on this Chargers team. Last year, he was second team All Big Ten. 95 tackles, led the team at a title-winning Michigan squad. I think that Junior Colson, while he's on a team in the Chargers that is looking to create a culture that post-Brandon Staley transforms into one of the better defenses because of the pieces they already have. I think Junior Colson, because of the fact he's learning under stars like Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Asante Samuel even, I think this guy is going to develop rather quickly. And while, as always with this kind of list, these are developmental prospects, Junior Colson is one of the most promising because of that factor. I think that in an IDP league, it could be a very intriguing option in the later rounds of your IDP drafts, but I'm really excited to see what he can do. That'll just about do it for this 4th segment of today's show. Coming up in our last segment, it is never too early to do your fantasy basketball seasons for fantasy basketball rankings for an upcoming season, and this should be a very interesting list. So stick around for the final segment of today's show.